My journey has been peppered with many an adventures. Where you're interviewing me exactly 15 kilometers from here, I was born in a hospital which was to service the needs of the poorest of the poor. In fact, when I was born, my father had a room above a tabela in Munirka, and they barely had 150 rupees between them, my parents. So today I'm sitting exactly 15 kilometers away from that very place as a cabinet minister. So you can well imagine what an adventure I have lived. I've had 2.5 decades of experience in media, 2.5 decades in Indian politics, and I'm extremely fortunate that I'm one of the rare people in the country who has done well in two professions. I've been in politics for 2.5 decades. I'm 46, which means more than half my life has gone in politics. There is an assumption that my political life began after media. I'm one of the few people, in fact the only one, who left the media business when I was at my peak. Normally people tend to leave their careers when the careers have already bid them goodbye. But I left when I was at the peak because it's a conscious choice. And I've been in politics as much as I've been in media, so it's been a complementary journey. What politics does to you is that introduces you to human facets which otherwise are not available in other vocations. In other vocations, you meet people at their best. In politics, you meet them at their best, their worst. You meet them when they are in demand. You meet them when they are in need. You meet them when they are in need of assistance. You meet them when they can provide assistance. So there is a gamut of emotions which confront you when you're in politics. The fact that you have to address aspirations and needs every day, and you have to evolve as an individual to handle the complexities of human life is, I think, one of the best takeaways from Indian politics. We have become such subjectively public people ourselves. Today, social media means that I will be giving out, tweeting out, or putting on Instagram every facet of my life, which makes you open to much more scrutiny than a human being 50 years ago deserved. Which means that you're measuring yourself at somebody else's scale almost every day. And I think that is the biggest mistake people do. When you open up yourself so much, it is not criticism you're opening yourself up to. It is validation by other people of yourself that you're opening yourself up to. It is very difficult for a public personality to say that my personal life is none of your business. But I've been saying this for 2.5 years. Even when I was a nobody, I was very clear that my profession stops at that door. And anybody who walks in or speaks to me professionally should never be under this misconception that they know me personally. They don't. Another problem that people do in professions is to say, oh, this is my colleague, almost a friend. When you are working, everybody is a colleague, nobody is a friend. Because friends do not come with expectations. Colleagues do. I've had a clarity of thought from day one. I have never sought validation from outsiders. I have never sought validation from within my own family units. I have never sought friendships at the workplace. I have never sought friendship with my child because I'm a mother to my child. So all those people who have these misgivings, I need to be my child's best friend, I don't have that misconception. So because I've had clarity of thought from day one, I believe that you have challenges which are emotional in nature. When you have these misconceptions, I don't. SAMVAD is something that began 2 years ago in collaboration with NIMHANS to help duty bearers of those institutions that are to service children. Now there's a distinction between serving children and serving those who serve children. We recognize the need to service those duty bearers because till such time their mental health and issues relating to their mental health and their professions were not addressed, they couldn't have been in a better position to serve the needs of children. Now, children who come to child welfare institutions are children who are either in need of protection of law or are in conflict with the law. Both are individual verticals. A child's emotional need is distinct when they are in conflict with the law, which means somewhere their emotional needs or emotional history has been such that they have been compelled to or have designated themselves to violate the law. And a child who is in need protection of the law is a child who believed that society at large and institutions in society will protect the child, which means that belief has been shattered. So when SAMVAD was started, it was distinctly started with the desire, one, to ensure that duty bearers get support because pandemic had struck and this was a once in a lifetime challenge. Second, one had to identify the distinction between the service needs of children in conflict with law and children in need of protection of law. Such distinction was never drawn before. Such a collaboration had never emanated before. Because of SAMVAD, we managed to train over 140,000 plus office bearers across the country, which included people who are running childcare institutions, schools, healthcare systems. The fact that we particularly focused on office bearers who service children, that was never seen before. Because mostly anybody who is in childcare, they never get pointed services for themselves. They are always taken on the wing of, अच्छा औरतों की मदद कर रहे हैं तो चलो बच्चों की भी यही मदद कर देंगे. So we deliberately distinguish between the two services. And within that service, we realized that there are subcultures that needed to be addressed. Now, simultaneously, we run close to 704 one-stop centers, which are crisis centers in the country. Between 35 helplines dedicated to women and the one-stop centers, in the past 2.5 years, 70 lakh women have been helped. But imagine the staff at that one-stop center dealing with 70 lakh women. Can you imagine their capacities emotionally, which have been stretched? So now with NIMHANS, we train those staff members in the one-stop centers. First, to recognize that yes, they themselves must have been emotionally stretched to service such a gamut of challenges with women in the country. And then to ensure that their training enables them in such a fashion that their own history with the center or their own trauma does not resurface or get transferred to a new victim who walks into the center. So I am describing this in detail because this is the precision with which we carried out these programs. They are still underway. The fact that I have the ability now to address what I have seen does not come from a position of arrogance, but comes from a position of experience. That I am dispassionate about ensuring that these issues get addressed is one thing. But the fact that over 140,000 people voluntarily came and engaged with the program also shows that this is not a realm which is looked upon from a perspective of stigma. I can pronounce that yes, this is not an area which is stigmatized, but it is validated administratively by that 140,000 people who stepped up and said, yes, I need help. That is the first step to recognizing that yes, I am met with a challenge and I need a solution. Well, I have seen the anthropology with regards to sociology and psychology. I've read it. And given the various, and what is mind-boggling is that most of our studies and research in the anthropological and historical view on psychology and sociology is all Western. There is no Indian view which is taught to our counselors. Now, if you look at it very pragmatically, you are taught concepts which have historically emanated from the West. Most of the psychological, anthropological or sociological philosophers have emanated from Europe. They have never considered our cultural linguistic diversity. They have never studied the complexity of our genetic differentiation. From our tribal population to our population in the Northeast to our population, let's say in Punjab, which has historically witnessed so many invasions. So, let me give you an example why I say this. There has been a research done about the trauma and its infliction with regards to generations within one family. And it was done in context of the Auschwitz, which is the camp where the Jews were literally brought to death by Hitler. And they found that though one generation had undergone that trauma in the concentration camp, the genetic imprint of it was on the third generation after. Which means many in our country, or for that matter the world over, may presume that your mental health status is to do with your familial or societal experiences now. Science now proves that there is something called a genetic imprint of mental health and trauma as well. And that is why, let me give you a very domestic context. Your mother must be telling you, तुम्हारे बच्चे होंगे तो पता चलेगा. Why is it that that cycle genetically, psychologically repeats itself? And why is it that everybody in their 40s and 50s say, हाँ माने ठीक कहा था? Your father tells the son in the family, तुम्हें पता चलेगा. How does the father know with such certainty? Because that father has been told by his father and has had an experience. So when you divorce the concept of mental health from genetics, you do it a great disservice. Which means that you're telling counselors and other mental health professionals that look at the now and you will find the answer now. Or for that matter, look at the journey from, it's not that simplified. I was born in X place. I went from X to Y place, and hence you can determine my state of mind. You can't. The human mind is more complex. You should read a philosopher called Jean-Jacques Rousseau. So if you look at how he looked at the sociological aspect of psychology, you'll be fascinated. Again, I don't think it's as simple as an advice which would suffice. I have always proclaimed that we as parents have to be very conscientious as what is the age-appropriate introduction of not only devices, but also age-appropriate introduction of material which is digitally available for your children. You will hear many a parent say, क्या करूँ जी, इसको तो 3 साल की उम्र से आ गया था मोबाइल यूज़ करना. That is not an excuse. If you brought a child into life, then you are responsible for every facet of that child's life. You can't introduce a child to a mobile phone at the age of 3 and then at the age of 12 say, पता नहीं इसको कैसे हो गया, पता नहीं कहाँ से आ गया. That is your responsibility. You can't say, पता नहीं कैसे बच्चा ये illegal, unlawful चीज़ें देख रहा था, कर रहा था, उसको कैसे पता कहाँ जाके कौन सा वीडियो गेम खेल रहा है. And then you can't say, sorry जी मैं नौकरी करूँ कि बच्चा देखूँ. So you have to, from day one, have that conscientious decision making within the family. And then from there on, mental health builds. For instance, we know that there is something called sugar rush, which impacts how children behave or they respond to a particular situation. बड़ा फुर्तीला बच्चा है, चिप्स खाता है. How many of us are conscious enough to check that in most fast foods, you have a very high sugar content? If you go and look at your chips bag, you will see it has fructose and other sugar contents. Why should chips have sugar in it? But for you to do that, you have to be a conscious parent. You can't feed your child that and say, अरे मेरा बच्चा obese हो गया, मेरे बच्चे को डायबिटीज हो गया, पता नहीं डॉक्टर साहब कैसे हो गया. If you have introduced that child to sugar, what are the complications that arise from it? You can't tell the child then deal with it. You have done it to the child. Firstly, I think that we need to, in our lives, relegate which people in our lives are alarmist, which are the positivists, who are the people who are negative in nature, who are the people who will possibly be disaffected and give you an opinion which will be helpful? Who are the people that you should not share your challenges with? We've become an oversharing, over-exhibitionist kind of people in many spheres. We somehow seem to get validation for the self if we have a number of followers on Twitter or on Instagram. What is the first thing people do now when they wake up? They check their phones. What is the first thing they do when they go to sleep at night? They check their phones. What do they do with the alarm clock? It is no longer that simple alarm clock which is sitting by your bedside. It is the phone. And you are operating it all day and saying, "Pata nahi kyun sar mein dard hai?" So what is the phone telling you? The phone is telling you that if you sit 2 minutes without it, there's something wrong, you're disconnected. So the underlying thing is that you're lonely. So if you're looking at people who are a bit older, now every age bracket has its own issues. For instance, if I have missed out, my son has missed out on his entire college and has done learning from home because of the pandemic. So his problems or his experiences will be different as compared to post-pandemic, where every student saying, "अरे भाड़ में गया मास्क, मुझे तो बिना मास्क के घूमना है." Then there is a problem of a woman who's sitting with her entire family at home, but what she has been doing the entire day for the past 2 years has been working from her VC, conference, cooking, cleaning. There is a man who would possibly be only back at home in the evening. Now he's stuck at home all day. So everybody's complexities and challenges would be different. Our problem is that we have an expectation that one answer will fit everybody. It won't. What is it that man who has not spent time with his family suddenly is with that family? What is that man going to do? And that woman who has not seen her husband at home, or who is working and looking after that husband at home now, thinking it's different. And their interpersonal relationship, how does that affect that child at home, will be absolutely different. Which means everybody's mental health needs will be different. The issue is, does everybody need help? That is your presumption. Many amongst us have grown up in families where we were taught, yes, there are challenges. And everybody's life will have challenges. And yes, you need to address those challenges. Many felt, "अरे मेरी challenge आप सुन नहीं रहे हो?" Many felt, "हाँ challenge है, मैं निपट लूँगा या निपट लूँगी." So today when we talk about mental health, what is the one red flag? The question is, how many in our society have we strengthened emotionally to deal with their own challenges? And if they can't deal with it, today I believe that situations have normalized to such a great extent as compared to, let's say, 20 years ago, when if an individual wants to get help, they do try and reach out. They may not be able to do so with, let's say, an institutionalized counselor. For instance, I did a little recce of Nimhans. And I said people who come to the institution to get help, which socio-economic backgrounds are they from? And everybody in that institution was mostly from lower middle class or poor families. What is it an indication of? That there is an acceptance that help is needed and people reached out and they took that help. So one of the greatest, again, fallacies about mental health is that it is an issue of the rich, is that it will have acceptance amongst the rich, the well-off, the academically inclined. The fact that the poorest of the poor also is looking for a resource to get help means that as an issue there is an acceptability that these challenges need to be addressed. Competing with an older version of you, then you won't take on that stress. You're competing with everybody else. For what? I'm speaking from personal experience. I have never competed with anybody else. Every time somebody asks me, who would you like to be? Me. I don't want to be anybody else. It is because you're looking at somebody and saying, oh God, that person is better than me, I need to compete. That, I believe, is where the problem begins. You compete with yourself. That means you put more value to that other individual than you value yourself. And then you say, मुझे stress हो रहा है. You bring value to yourself. You validate yourself. I don't need somebody else to give me a certificate as to the person I am. People can love me, people can hate me. I couldn't care less. But the minute you compete with somebody else, remember you're adding more value to them and you think you're not as good as them. That's why you're competing. It's not about the journey. I think it's about the decision. So who do I want to be tomorrow, 5 years from now? I want to be a better version of me or the same version of me. If I decline how I view myself, then that is an introspection I need to do. I remember when I was 10 years old and I told my mother, एक दिन ये दुनिया मेरे बारे में बात करेगी. My mother said, do you know you're talking from one room in R.K. Puram which is on rent and you're living off food which I'm getting from others. You're living off a scholarship. I said, I know. I said, kids like you never have that capacity. I said, I know. But I'm not like the other kids. I'm not competing with those kids. I'm not competing with kids who are better off. I'm competing with me. And I got a tight slap from my mother. She thought I'm crazy. So now every time I say, I know in my family, they say, हाँ, इसको पता है. I think there's too much talk. I think people have stopped appreciating silences. There's too much movement. And we are still the same where we were at. Does everybody have to talk on every issue and know everything? We have stopped expecting or accepting that there are some things I might not know. That acceptance brings humility. Then मुझे नहीं आता जी, लेकिन हाँ मैं पढ़ सकती हूँ, मैं सीख सकती हूँ, लेकिन आता नहीं है. कुछ चीज़ें मैं सीख नहीं सकती, उसका भी रियलाइजेशन हो. आप मुझे आज बोलो कि मैं पाइथागोरस थ्योरम के ऊपर बैठ के लंबा 2 घंटे का लेक्चर दे, मैं नहीं दे सकती क्योंकि मेरा एरिया ऑफ इंटरेस्ट नहीं है. पाइथागोरस थ्योरम है क्या, उसका प्राइमा फेसी मैं पढ़ाई कर सकती हूँ ताकि अगर कोई लेक्चर दे तो मुझे समझ आए कि अच्छा क्या बोल रहे हैं, लेकिन मेरा वो एरिया ऑफ इंटरेस्ट नहीं है. लेकिन क्या मैं कॉन्वर्सेशन कर सकती हूँ एक मैथमेटिशियन के साथ? हाँ. मैं जब HRD मंत्री थी, then I brought to this country an association with Manjul Bhargav, who is the Field Medals of Honor mathematician, which is the equivalence to the Nobel Prize. Why? Because I loved the fact that Manjul learned mathematics from poetry. When I was Minister Education in the country, I established Aryabhatta's Pratima in UNESCO headquarters. And I did an international conference on India's contribution to the field of mathematics. And I had the French come and talk about Indian mathematics. That I can do. But Pythagoras theorem के ऊपर मैं 2 घंटे का lecture नहीं दे सकती. So you have to accept that this I can't do. Right now, we want to be, I know everything. And then when we actually don't know anything, and that is pointed out, we have this sense of outrage, or we have this sense of stress, or we have this sense of negativity about ourselves. मुझे कोई बोले यूसेन बोल्ट की तरह भागो, मैं नहीं भाग सकती. लेकिन यूसेन बोल्ट को बोलो जाके अमेठी जीते, वो नहीं जीत सकता. And many a times what happens is, when you're so self-assured, people say you're arrogant. That is another problem. they will say तुम arrogant हो, बड़ा आता है तुमको. You have to accept that also. So the issue is that whatever you are, there will never be acceptance of it. There will never be complete validation of it. There will never be celebration of it. But if you bother about all that, that's when your complexities arise. Let's not ever miscommunicate that mental health and mental well-being means you're bereft of stress. It is an impossibility. What mental well-being can indicate is that you have the capacities to introspect, you have the capacities to reach out for help if you need it, and you have the capacities to move forward. Or for that matter, if you choose so, stand still, not a problem. It is about those capacities. Everybody says Zen mode. Contextualize it for India. What does it mean? So, like I said, there is no way no human being can be devoid of stress. Because stress is not a professional facet. Stress now is a way of life. कुछ लोगों को स्ट्रेस ये हो जाती है यार ट्रेन टाइम पे नहीं आई. कुछ लोगों को स्ट्रेस हो जाती है बॉस ने रात को 12 बजे फ़ोन किया. कुछ लोगों को स्ट्रेस हो जाती है बॉस ने सुबह 10 बजे फ़ोन क्यों नहीं किया. कुछ लोगों को ये स्ट्रेस हो जाती है सामने वाले को ज़्यादा मिल गया इंक्रीमेंट, मुझे अभी तक किसी ने बुलाया नहीं. कुछ लोगों को स्ट्रेस हो जाती है कि यार अभी अगले सप्ताह में छटाई में मेरा नंबर तो नहीं कट जाएगा. कुछ लोगों के पास घर है, वो सोचें यार वो बंगला कहाँ से है. तो स्ट्रेस इज़ नॉट समथिंग कि काम पे आओगे तो स्ट्रेस है. वो जो भाभी जी काम नहीं कर रही हैं, घर पे बैठी हैं, उनको भी स्ट्रेस है. Every human being has faced some trauma or the other. What is it that you faced? You need to have that conversation with yourself, very honestly. Which relationship makes you meet it with such exuberance? And when I say relationship, it can be work or personal. That you go in very exuberant, but you come back with either a headache or a self-doubt. What are the reasons for that headache or that self-doubt? And then how do you tackle it? As you grow older, you somehow know. कई बार क्या होता है घर पे, अच्छा ये आने वाले आए हाय ऑफिस जा रहे, ओ हो आज ये है ऑफिस में, ओ गॉड नो. योर बॉडी ऑलरेडी नोज, which means your body is now acting to the trauma, which means that your brain is disconnected with the trauma to which your body is acting, because your brain will tell you कि कोई नहीं यार निपट लेंगे, but your body is so traumatized. And I use the word trauma very very lightly right now, but it's true. You need to start thinking, who's the one person you see and say, oh babare, that means your body is reacting against that person. How do you then train your body to stop reacting and get your body in control of your mind? That is an individual exercise, cannot be done. Thank you.